On stage now, we have Matthias Keller, the Chief Scientist and SVP Technology at Kayak, and he will be introduced and interviewed by Matt Marshall, founder and CEO of VentureBeat. Please give them a warm welcome.
You know, Stuart's jokes get worse. Get close to the end of the event, but wait till he closes. So Matthias, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm sorry about your voice.
For the last 25 minutes, my voice today.
It's gotten worse over the course of today. Yeah, he was fine at breakfast, but he's got kids in childcare, as I do, and so it's your month this term. It's my turn next month. Matthias, travel. Right? This is actually the first time we've had travel on stage over the course of the 2 days. We had Uber represented, but in terms of just flight, hotel, it was the first industry when we started doing 2 years ago. We started looking at bots, and Facebook had launched this platform. Travel was the most highly represented industry. It was the fastest to start adopting, and you were out there experimenting with some of these platforms, and you've been experimenting across all channels, right? So now Alexa, you were early last year, one of the first to start talking about it. So again, one of the first to experiment on Facebook as well, and it's kind of reflective of your company overall. We talked with OpenTable, so just context for the audience. OpenTable, Kayak are part of Bookings Holdings, and it's a $100 billion company that has in its DNA again constant optimization. It's doubled in growth over the last couple of years, so significant growth, presumably because a lot of machine learning. We've talked with executives over the last couple of years from that company, and you're kind of a fleet-footed brand with a lot of ability to experiment. So just curious if you could give us some context for how you're seeing AI driving Kayak's business right now.
Yes, sure. So as you said, there is a lot of new technology work, and that work is important for us because mobile was one of these new technologies a long time ago. And what's also important is that us and many of the other players in the field, we all started very digital. So we don't have to do these kind of like retail becoming digital problems. We are just kind of like data first, so to speak. Mm-hmm. About the machine learning and AI, I keep saying that we have been doing machine learning for 10 years or actually more, because fundamentally how Kayak works is that 14 years ago, we started scraping web pages, normalize them, make it consumable to our users. And it's not scraping anymore, it's more like APIs, but it's also not just prices anymore, it's reviews and images from users, and all kind of like information on neighborhoods, it's all that data, and it's just so much data that nobody can consume, and that needs work to kind of like also normalize it in a sense. And what the most exciting or the most successful part here is that not only that we always started machine learning together with A/B experimentation to improve the top and the bottom line of the business, we also now see, like, if we would have talked last year, I would have said neural nets are more like we're trying to do something with them. Right now we have multiple features on our site that are based on neural nets that we set up and that are now producing realistic, good results, such as content summarizations, content classifications, and all these things that initially was really like playing around, and now it's a fundamental part of the product.
Wow, so just within a year, neural nets has taken off from just speculation to actual part of the. Could you give us a sense of the results that they're yielding, or is it still early?
So the way where we use neural nets now, and this is really very important for us, is that we have like 1 million hotels that you can find on Kayak. If we add non-hotel accommodations, put another million to it. And each of these may have like 50 images, and for some hotels we get them from 10 different sources. And now all you want to know is like, how does a bathroom at this hotel look like? Yeah. And instead of you going through all these bad images of bathrooms and bad images of the golf court, we now use a neural net to tag these images to find what is the best angle of the image, what is the best image that we have, what is maybe the same image and it has just been misclassified. And the same applies, for instance, to user-generated reviews. I mean, when it initially started, it was of course going slow, but users giving reviews is also sort of an old hat by now, meaning there are so many of them. But now if we want to provide you all the reviews related to the location or if the rooms are quiet, that's also a machine learning application because it's a very hard natural language programming problem. Because if you think of it, there are so many different ways how you can talk about the location, and I can just say like, it's close to the Salesforce tower, or I could say like, it's in the city center, and it's kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. One of the areas you talked about also being cited was prediction. It sounded like you were using, you in the cloud with AWS, or you were talking about your bill going up for some of this work. Talk a little bit about price prediction, because we've heard of Faircast. I think they got acquired by Microsoft. Was it what, 115 million a few years back, and then you had Hopper come out, and then Hopper was just with us in a breakout, going deep on their model with price prediction, right, and using machine learning for notifications. Can you talk a little bit about, because people don't really think about price prediction, or they don't think so when it comes to Kayak. Talk a little bit about what you're doing there, some of the traction you have.
So if you think of booking a flight, it's pretty much all about the price.
Yeah.
There is a level of convenience that you need, but at the end of the day, it's the price. And there are multiple products around that. Like we have these notifications that notify you when a price changed, went up or down.
Yeah.
And there is like for, I would also say roughly 10 years, there's this feature, and this is like the same Faircast model, that you run a search on our site, and it tells you if you should buy now or if it may be worthwhile waiting because the price is expected to go down. And this is something that we always had, and that the way how it works, it didn't require this massive amount of data. Also specifically because like many people usually search the same thing, so we have a lot of history, especially on the very popular routes. But the next step we want to go now is basically, we want to be able for, let's say, every route in the world, for every possible date, we want to be able to give you a price, which may not be the exact price, but we want to give you a closely good enough price, and we want to give to that in like a sub-second. Yeah. And what we turn out doing there is that this is where the problem comes into place, that you need to have this freshly trained model because prices keep changing. There are a lot of things happening in there that we don't really understand because it's a lot of humans switching on and off different price tags. And this is where we see gradient boosters. They happen again this morning to come up. Yeah. It's this shiny new technology that everyone loves. Right. They already give us really tremendous results, but we now see even better results coming up using neural networks, which are doing really great on this kind of like random things happening we cannot model. Mm-hmm. And this is especially where neural nets really help when we just don't know what's happening.
Is that giving you kind of industry leadership in price prediction? I mean, who else has got a more sophisticated? Because my understanding from Hopper's, it's more AI on the notification side. I don't want to speak for Hopper, but they've gotten a pretty good reputation for price prediction, but largely for notification. I'm just wondering, you've been doing it for so long. Now you're applying neural nets and these new approaches. Are you confident about being the industry leader?
Hopefully. I mean, if we talk about price prediction, so first of all, I think we have to be fair that the perfect crystal ball is not existing. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about the quality of predictions, there are many different ways how you measure it. Are you talking about hitting the right direction? Are you talking about hitting it within $1, within $5, within $10, and all that? And there is no standard how to measure that. Our belief how we measure is that we have the best solution out there. Other competitors may say that their way of measurement has them being the best. But nevertheless, this is all based on previous generation, and I'm very confident that the next generation is not only going to drive much more accurate and much more actionable price predictions, it's also really going to help users in many different problems, like you can travel any weekend and you don't care, but you don't want to run 8 different weekend searches. You just want to have this tool telling you really quick, this is the best weekend you should go. And all kind of variations that suddenly get possible, like Google with their purchase of ITA, they have the advantage that they know every price on earth. Right. So they can do very easy things like saying this other airport is cheaper, a day later is cheaper as well. And while we didn't buy ITA, we are now building up AI that gives us the same purpose of, without having to get the actual price, having a good estimate of the price, being able to tell you maybe you should stay a day longer because you're going to save $100.
Great. One of the things we talked about in prep was your excitement around the Alexa work that you're doing, and also some Siri work. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of those platforms as distribution tools?
Yeah, so I think about 2 years ago, we started working with chatbots and voice platforms. And admittingly, and I think this is what everyone did, it was really about finding out what sticks and what works. So we had a lot of learnings from that, and then there are also the new opportunities coming up. So starting with the learnings is that we realized that we can provide the most value on these platforms if they are supporting the user in reaching their travel goals more than immediately shopping something. It is really, our current vision is that it's a ubiquitous conversation with your travel plans. It can be before you book, you may just kind of like trying to find out what you're trying to do. It can be after you book, you want to know when you want to leave or where your plane is. And a couple of interesting products we have there that are super exciting is that, one, we just about 4 months ago launched flight tracker notifications on Alexa, which is basically you telling Alexa you want to be notified 30 minutes before a certain plane lands. And what I like about that is that for me, this is a third dimension of voice computing. Because like we have the first dimension of control, switch on some lights, turn on the temperature. We have a second dimension of pulling information, like what's the weather. But this is not a third dimension of asking for information that is not available right now because it's not relevant right now, and having a system behind the scene like this agent looking for our plane and notifying us right now when the event happened. So this is a third dimension for us. The other exciting thing, which is not yet available but will launch in fall together with iOS 12, is that Apple now finally opened up Siri for basically every app developer in a way that we can define so-called shortcuts. This will give us the way that a lot of our users use our Trips application during their travel, because it tells them if their plane is delayed, which gate they have to go, what the address of the hotel is. And we will now be able to do that on voice without having to open our app, which is really phenomenal, because I think together also with all the other app developers going on that technology, it will probably be very common that you're going to get a lot of things done together with Siri. And we are very excited that we are part of the first wave of getting things done on Siri.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Amazon and Siri, which actually hasn't come up an amazing amount at this event, surprisingly. But you are downplaying Google, and presumably it's because of their play in ITA. Could you talk a little bit about Google Assistant as a distribution tool? Are you essentially just bypassing it, it's just not interesting, or are you going to play there?
It is very different. So whenever I look at Google, I look at 20 Googles, and there are many of them that are really strong partners of ours. We are participating in the Google Ads for hotels.
Right.
We are using a lot of open source technology that are pushing like TensorFlow for neural nets. We are working together with them on SEO optimization, on mobile site optimization. And out of these 20, there is one of them that's doing travel.
Yeah.
And the way how we look at it is that, to be fair, they have an interesting access to intent and access that we will never have, which is the front door of the internet.
Yeah.
But there is still a lot of distinctive product features that want me keep using Kayak, which is that I know that there is more comprehensiveness. Even if there's like some small flight provider in Brazil, we are going to work with them.
Yeah.
If there is some small low-cost carrier in Spain, we are going to work with them. If there is, we spend much more effort in really integrating these hundreds of sites that we search. It's not just marketing, it's really hundreds of sites that we search.
Yeah.
And I also think that there has to be something to be said about being an industry company. There's definitely also an interesting UI and UX race between Kayak and Google, and I would argue that they are our strongest competitor in the United States in flights. So far, I really see it also as it's a very strong partner, and then there's this one unit that does a product that is somehow differentiated to us, and I prefer ours.
Yeah. Yeah. How significant is the U.S. market I mean, is this?
It is still the majority for Kayak. I don't have any split. It is also changing every time where we grow. The fastest growth is definitely outside of the US.
Yeah.
But definitely Kayak started as a US company, and this is where the majority of the business is.
So we had a Samsung executive yesterday talk about, I don't know if you were there for his conversation, but the goalkeeper analogy, which we've repeated maybe once too many times. But just there's a tendency of companies to be the goalkeeper that backs away from that charging striker because the ball's coming at you plus maybe 100, 150 pounds. And really, it's the reverse, that you've actually got to go charge and narrow the angle. You know, given that you're trying to be that front place for search, top of the funnels, and now Google has that aggressive play there. What's your version of that charge? I guess I'm hearing that you have a lot of these plays. Is there one that represents that charge forward in terms of AI applications, or is there no one play?
I think we have multiple plays, and so the first play is that we are putting a lot of focus on the UI and UX in our products, and that we want to have the best travel UI out there. We are probably not going to reach them in speed anytime soon. Yeah. Or well, maybe with at least our AI predictions. But there is a fair race in the UX and the UI. We definitely are hyper-focused on just travel, which also allows us to do really applications that are, it's not all about selling the ticket. There is so much more. There is the trip planning. We just also recently launched it. It's not AI, but it's a tool called Trip Huddle, where basically you invite your friends on planning a trip together. Like, where do you want to go? When do we want to go? You can paste in and drop in some hotels, and like a lot of people travel in groups, and so we take the time to work on these type of problems. And while I would say that the Google product is mostly really focused on selling tickets, we are really focused on the whole problem of how do I solve travel? What's the whole experience? If things go sideways, you could even call us. And this is, I think, very different, and this makes it like a company that is just in travel. And AI is going to be, it's one race. I don't know to the extent what extent Google Travel uses AI. For us, it is very important, and it's for us also important to give the right information in front of users so that they come to us because they find the right information there.
Yeah, you were expressing quite a bit of excitement around the voice plus screen interface. And ironically, or maybe not, Scott Huffman opened the conference talking about his excitement for voice plus screen. So maybe it's not a zero-sum game. Maybe you're both going to benefit. But can you talk a little bit about your own excitement? You talked about large screens too, as opposed to say the mobile screen, which most of us think about when we're talking about these things. Can you talk a little bit about where you're seeing voice plus screen?
Definitely. So I mean, it started with Amazon coming up with Echo Show, which is right now still more of a premium device, and definitely I think most people still buy the Echo Dot or like the screenless device. But now just recently we did an optimization of our Kayak skill on the Fire TV Cube, which brings the skill on a 50-inch screen, and together with little remote control, and it's talking, tapping, and when we looked at that and when we looked at our prototypes, we realized this is how flight booking is going to work. And there is a lot of information you need, all these numbers and stopovers, and how long do I have time for the layover, which you can't really bring over in voice. Yeah. It's not going to be a good experience. It's actually already challenging to deal with all that on the phone. Yeah. But these large screens, they're really going to be perfect for that. And the other angle I look at is that, so there's having more space for commerce tend to happen. But the other angle I really look also at is that I'm hoping that TVs are going to become this kind of like personal home dashboards, have all my information, buy the milk, pick up the kids. And maybe there will also be some space to make sure that there is a relevant information in travel, sort of like plane is going to arrive in 30 minutes, prices just dropped. And what's also exciting me here is that it's not just the space of the screens. Screens are also in many ways very passive often. Like you don't have to really activate them, they're just running.
Yeah.
And that's, I think this kind of like passive consumption of information is also going to be very helpful in a continuous interaction with travel.
Well, in the interaction with the large screen, is that mostly voice, or is there some other interface?
So if you get a Fire TV right now,
Thanks,
Fire TV Cube right now from Amazon, there is a little remote control, so you can talk to it, you can navigate it, and yes, so like basically it's tapping and talking.
Yeah. So we have some time for questions. Anybody want to ask a question for Matthias? If you do, raise your hand and wait for the microphone.
So I'm curious about user segmentation. And I've been wondering, is it better to just sort of have many different segments, or to simply consider each person their own segment? And curious your thoughts on that.
Well, we had this morning Joseph from OpenTable saying that if you are a heavy user, you will have dozens of reservations. I would say if you are a heavy user on Kayak, you have a one-digit number of flights. Well, there are probably also some with dozens, but what I'm saying is like booking a flight is not watching Netflix. So the single person segmentation has technical limits. From this perspective, it makes much more sense to start with higher level segments like business traveler versus personal traveler, large group versus small group, which then allows you to already make decisions such as, well, that's a large group going for a very long time. They may find non-hotel accommodation more interesting than hotel accommodation. Or we know that a lot of people from Boston, for some reason, they go to Nantucket. So if I see another user from Nantucket, it can't be a bad recommendation doing this. But it's a lot of, I would say, still anonymous data that is in bigger segments, just for the reason that if you look at bookings alone, there is only a few people who probably travel for work will do like 10 or more trips a year.
John?
First of all, thanks for talking. I mean, sounds like you're going through quite a bit right there, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Secondly, I'm pretty interested in what you had to say about doing some travel planning while you're looking at like a 50-inch screen and talking to it and seeing. I think that's really, really critical, the interplay between voice and visual. And I know you mentioned you can integrate with Alexa, you can integrate with Siri in ways, but what about inside your own app? It'd be nice to be able to tell the app, I want to go here, there, for such and such long time, stay here, stay there, whatever. See what's happening, make changes on the fly with your finger. And you've got voice happening, visual happening, tapping happening. It's a multimodal experience. It can be really, really rich. You can do stuff like that with SoundCloud, for instance. It makes your own Alexa, basically. Any thoughts on that?
So first thought I have, it's a great question. And so the first thought I have is that when we in the early days experimented with users using voice to navigate our site, it didn't really pick up. And the reason was that back in the day, that was like 2 years ago, it didn't really make sense that you get your phone, unlock it, open an app, and then you start talking to it. The only interaction really has to happen on a lock screen, which is now what's going to happen with Siri. But it seems that the modality that users want to be in is either like, ideally I just want to talk because I'm mobile running around, or I have the time to use the screen. But like talking to a small screen doesn't seem to be too appealing. So from that perspective, for the voice interaction, I would argue you have to have at least 10, 15 inch for it to make sense. And it also wouldn't be my computer. I don't, like if you look at Cortana, I don't think that a lot of people use it. But on a big screen, it suddenly starts to make sense. And this is where I can see such interaction happening, because if you look at it, and I'm not saying that we have that today, but if you look at it, if you start this exploration on your TV, you can suddenly add video, you can add audio, you have enough space to kind of like, for all your ideas, it's high definition. And then you can have not only this multimodal, but also this very rich content experience that really helps you. Like, okay, you say I should go to Fiji, so how does Fiji look like? And what do other people say about Fiji? And you know, maybe at some point there is a VR tour about Fiji, but we also just tested. We have a VR app out there now where you can look at Venice and Kathmandu, and right now it's clunky because like you need to wear the goggle, but it's very interesting actually to try it before you buy, so to speak. And these multimodal experience on large screens, they could make that happen in a more casual, easier way, I think.
So I had a question about, there has been a lot of conversation around applied techniques in AI. We see, so for example, there was mentioned in one of the conversations that the biggest breakthrough was, for example, neural networks becoming available to the general public. Can we expect those sort of things from new organizations, or is it always going to be bigger organizations bringing this to the market and the rest of them just sort of depending on them to come with the next breakthrough? And if that is the case, how do the smaller organizations compete with the bigger organizations in AI?
That's a great question. I mean, you're right that the big companies, they are using this technology definitely to have advantages in technologies like self-driving cars. I think that's a big battle. And luckily, they haven't been hyper-focused on travel yet. I'm not sure if the solution is to say, like, we have to also start developing more of these methodologies. I think it's not very practical because there's also a lot of investment around this. I'm hoping that there's maybe this, you know, there's a general discourse around AI and how can we use it, how can't we use it. Maybe it should be an outcome of this as well, that we talk about, that maybe you shouldn't be able to keep these things in your back pocket. Otherwise, there may definitely be a significant advantage at some point of one of the 3-4 big players.
So unfortunately, we're out of time. We're also out of words, I think, for Matthias's voice. So it's a good time to end here. Matthias, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.